In this video, we're going to take a look at how to trigger Looply from an SAP Workflow. This is an S/4HANA system, but it's exactly the same for SAP ECC. We've built a really simple workflow and found an event we can trigger easily in order to start the workflow process. This is all just in order to push some information from the ERP system to Microsoft Teams as a notification. So let's first of all take a look at the SAP Workflow definition. Here we see a very simple one-step workflow. There is a single custom field added called Partner, and other fields created automatically when generating the binding. Let's look at the start event, which is how this workflow will be triggered. We see the business object for a customer master record and the changed event. Now let's look at the binding. All we're doing is copying the business partner number from the triggering object to the custom field in the workflow container. There are a lot of other fields we might also take, for example the customer name, but we're keeping it really simple for this demonstration. The main step in this workflow is to trigger Looply, and for this we use a standard task that's always the same, that's calling a trigger method for the Looply class. The only thing we need to think about here is some binding. Now let's see the binding between the workflow container and the task. We see we have a step number and a workflow version number, the work item ID of the workflow step, and the workflow definition number. Those are the 4 fields we need when we trigger Looply. Since we have the business partner, we could pass that in as well if we so wished at this point. Instead, we're going to read that from the SAP Workflow container later on. These 4 fields match the process definition table key fields that is used to determine which workflow to call in Looply. So let's take a look at that. Here we are in the IMG, and we navigate to the Looply process determination option. This is the record we are interested in. This is the workflow number that we were just looking at. Let's see the table side by side with the binding. The other fields in the binding match the table key of the process determination table. We might have multiple steps or different workflow versions in play, so this is very flexible. So in this process definition table, it determines this workflow ID that's inside Looply, and it also determines this function, which is called to determine all the data we want to pass to Teams. Looking at the function we see, we read the contents of the workflow container. We read the partner number and pass that into a specific field. We also read any workflow agents that have been assigned or handle the scenario like this one, where there is no agent assigned in the workflow, so we determine the recipient another way. This is our opportunity to determine the email address of each Teams user to whom we will send the notification. Now we move to Looply to see the workflow definition there. In the Workflow Studio, we see the workflow ID in the URL or the triggering event, and also in the URL of the workflow definition at the top of the screen. This workflow triggers an adaptive card, a customer change alert card, then waits for a minute and then deletes the card. It's very simple and created in moments. Let's look at the card design. Again, we've kept it really simple. There are just 2 text blocks, and the second one has some data mapping to the util data field that we filled with the partner number. That's the only field from SAP we're going to see on this card. That's everything we need. We're ready to give this a test. Let's do this through the Fiori Launchpad and resize the screen so we can see the Teams chat. We open up the Manage Customers app to see a list of customers. And let's choose a customer. We go into Edit mode and we'll change a field. Then save. This app update now triggers the change event on the customer master, which triggers the business workflow inside SAP, which in turn triggers the Looply workflow. The Looply workflow generates an adaptive card and pushes it to Teams. We see that the card has arrived as expected with the correct customer number. And that's how easy it is with Looply to trigger a card in Teams. From here, you can add more data into the card, or links, or actions buttons, depending on your specific process needs. Looply, everything you need, all in one place.